Bobby Wine's persistence, his refusal to disappear, is a counterstatement. It says to Uganda, to Africa, and the rest of the world that radical reimagination of our institutions is imperative. Many of you have probably seen Bobby Wine, the People's President. It's the Oscar-nominated Peabody Award-winning film that documented his movement. That film did something crucial for global consciousness. It refused to let the world see Uganda's politics as a settled question. It reframed African politics as a foregone conclusion, with people merely existing as the victims. It made visible the complexity and legitimacy of a youth-led movement demanding democratic voice, freedom, dignity, and the right to prosper. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. I hope we gain a better understanding of the situation in Uganda, especially over the past 6 months, and of course, to discuss what the better alternatives look like. On behalf of the Department of African Studies, we welcome you and thank you, especially Mr. Warren, for your sacrifice and vision. I want to take a moment to thank the leadership of ASGFA, that's the African Studies Graduate Student Association, Miranda Rivers, Innocent Ekajioba, and last but not least, Abacho Angulo. Thank you for organizing this. I want to extend a special gratitude to Mr. Milton Alamadi of the Black Star News for reconnecting us. Without further delay, I present Mr. Bobby Wine and Mr. Milton Alamadi. Thank you.
Your home was raided by the military. Your wife, Barbara, assaulted. Many of your supporters didn't know what had happened to you. It took almost 2 months before people realized you were still alive. Would you like to talk a little bit about that as an introduction before I get into the specific questions? Because sometimes we tend to forget that you have a family. You're talking about human beings here. We're not just talking about who wants to become Uganda. So talk a little bit about that on a personal family note, about that experience. And in as much as you can say how you managed to get out of Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greetings, sisters and brothers. I'm very honored to be with you today. My real name is Tabulani Sentamu, although I'm known by my musical stage name, BOBI Wine. On January 15th, we had an election, a presidential election, and that was the second time I was running for president. I first ran for president in Uganda in 2021. That story is all summarized in a Netflix documentary, in a Nat Geo documentary that is on Hulu called BOBI Wine, the People's President. It was a long, sad, miserable story. But in January this year, I ran for president. We held the polls on 15th, and immediately my wife and I had cast our ballot. We were surrounded by the military and placed under house arrest. The following day, on the 16th, we were raided, but I escaped from home because I had learned earlier that there was an order to harm me fundamentally, an order issued by the Chief of Defense Forces, the head of the Uganda military, who is also the son of General Museveni, the President of Uganda now. I remained in hiding for over a week, and on the 23rd of January, once again, my house was raided, my wife assaulted, family members assaulted, and my wife ended up in hospital. Luckily enough, she used her smarts and escaped from her hospital bed and was able to make it out of the country with our children. I remained in the country for the next close to 2 months until I was able to still make it out of the country and be here. Now, why did I escape from my country? There were orders, not private orders, but these orders were all even tweeted by General Museveni, who is the head of the Ugandan military and the son of the current president, who issued an order that I should be delivered to him dead or alive. He followed it up with another order that I should be found by the military and castrated. Now these are still on Twitter as we speak right now. Of course, this follows the constant bragging. He is also quoted having tweeted that he had killed 23 of my friends, and these are not numbers, these are real people. And he was hoping that I'm the 24th person he gets unkilled. This is a person that has abducted my friends, including my personal bodyguard, tortured him, not in silence, but live on social media, shared him here and here, and then tweeted the naked pictures of him. This is the same person that raided the home of my personal political assistant, expecting to get me there. They thought that is where I was hiding. They didn't get me, and they abducted the wife of my personal assistant, held her in the military barracks for 37 days. In those 37 days, so much nasty things happened to her, but among which she told us that they even removed her contraception, the IUD, from her. Now these and many other abuses are done, especially to women. Knowing that was the case, I knew what would befall me if I fell in their hands. That's how I ended up here. Now many people, especially back home, especially those that are in support of the regime but are trading under the Pan-African banner, were criticizing me of ending up in America and not in another African country like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and all these others. But we all know that the dictatorships back home are intertwined and look up to one another. We have a very known political icon called Dr. Kizza Besigye, who was the main opposition leader for so many years before I showed up. He was abducted in Kenya by Ugandan security, driven across the border in a car truck, and right now in prison in Uganda, having been presented in a kangaroo military court. Many other citizens have been abducted either from Tanzania or from Kenya and other countries. That is how I ended up here. I'm not here to seek pity. I'm here to seek solidarity with Africans and citizens of the world, because I know that time immemorial, the liberation of oppressed places has been successful with the help of their diasporas. That's why I'm here. I could go on and on and on, but I hope that's introductory enough.
Thank you for that. All right, so let's stick with the theme of the military for now. And no showed up to the campaign rallies. Could you try to explain that? Why are people willing to take that risk to come to your campaign rallies, even though they know that there's a very high likelihood of violence being let out by the armed forces and the police?
Thank you. What keeps bringing the people to listen to the message of change is hope. It is only hope, and hope, the stubborn hope that drives the people. What keeps us going is the desire to keep that hope alive. We said it many times that Uganda is the second youngest country in the world. We are young, we are broke, we are hungry and angry. We could pick guns and remove that government, that oppressive regime. But we know history has shown us that violence has not produced peace, it produces more violence. And we also know that it's painful, but non-violence is stronger than violence. That's why we stuck to non-violence. So we went into this campaign like we did the other time, well knowing the kind of regime that we were facing, but it was the only window for us to connect with the people, to interact with the people, and to awaken and arouse them, and we achieved that. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the next questions is the role of outside countries. And the question is, how do international actors, whether it's governments, China, or multilateral institutions, and of course that includes the World Bank and IMF, how do they shape the political outcomes in Uganda? And how should African leaders navigate these influences while maintaining sovereignty? Well, in the case of Uganda, it's a bit different because he's maintained his sovereignty for the last 40 years now. So if you talk about that in Uganda's case, but generally in African countries as well.
Thank you very much. Sovereignty has a completely different meaning back home. Just like elections, just like democracy. I mean, these are words that are used and thrown around whenever desired by the authoritarian leaders back home. In the context of Uganda, much as we got independence 63 years ago, in 1962, I don't look at us as the citizens independent. The regime in Uganda for over a decade has been receiving up to $1 billion every year from the United States, let alone what comes from Europe and other countries. But this has been a transaction not between the people of Uganda and the development partners, but between General Museveni and the development partners. It's unfortunate, and this we've been reiterating it, that we are oppressed not because we are weak as the people of Uganda. Africans are oppressed by dictators not because they're weak, but because those dictators have a wind in their wing, and that wind are the so-called development partners. Allow me to call them oppression partners. Why? Because these are democracies, and if they wanted us to have democracy, we won't get it. I'll take you a little bit back. Idi Amin was supported by the British until they had had enough of him and others. The apartheid regime was supported by the West until they had had enough of him. I am very sure that if America or Europe did not agree with the oppression of the people of Uganda, they would stop it by disassociating with it. The regime in Uganda and many other authoritarian regimes in Africa have their bloodline, have their support, have their survival tied to the developed world. While elections are being rigged, all we get are statements and not action. On 18th and 19th November 2020, hundreds of people were massacred on the street in Uganda. Yes, we got some statements of condemnation, but we did not see any sanctions being slapped on those people that killed Ugandans in cold blood. And that continues again and again and again. So, yeah, the dictators are there, but they get their survival. from the foreign partners. Today, Museveni is in business with China, and because of that, the biggest survival source, which is Lake Naroba, they call it Lake Victoria, is out of balance for the local fishing communities. Why? Because the Chinese are using it. The foreigners, for as long as they are white or have white skins in Uganda, are much more regarded than the citizens. It can go on and on and on and on. Much of the reason why we come to the developed world is to call them out. We know that apartheid thrived until a documentary was shown here in America against apartheid, and until there were widespread protests of Africans and friends of Africa condemning apartheid, that apartheid was defeated and brought down. So we come here not because people back home are not church. When you look at the campaign, the masses, young, old, male, female, educated, uneducated, rural, urban, all turned up to show their desire for change. But the dictator was able to subdue them by killing them, by abducting them, by raping women and men to cow them down. And yes, that succeeds because the Western world closes their eyes. That's why we come to spaces like this, well knowing that a student of Howard University might be a singular student, but you have to with me that you, especially who come from Africa, are so followed and so honored and so respected. To raise this voice, maybe this voice will be echoed by you and get our friends, the American population, and those that you can reach out to ensure that they are provoked, at least their conscience is provoked to change the narrative back home. Thank you.
All right, so I want to ask you a question about the youth movement and how you galvanize the youth in Uganda. Uganda is one of the youngest countries in the world. 80% of the population is under the age of 35. But before you respond to that question, and the importance of the youth movement in Africa, we've seen some changes in countries like Senegal because of what the youth have been able to do by coming out to the streets. So I want you to address that, but before that, I want to turn on to what you said in your last remark in terms of how the global community was galvanized to fight apartheid in South Africa. And I've always thought about this. Do you think it was much easier to get a global movement against apartheid than to try to galvanize a global movement to go after an African government which actually have repressive policies that are comparable to the apartheid regime? Maybe you could speak on that and then segue to the youth.
Thank you. Why was it easier to get the global movement against apartheid up and running than now? I wouldn't be very quick to say it was easier because Mandela was in prison for 27 years. And even before then, there was oppression. In fact, I believe it took longer. Why? Because the oppressors there, maybe because they were white. But again, I'll tell you that the challenge that I see is that back home we seem to be quick to condemn an oppression by foreigners and to close an eye to oppression by our own kith and kin. Oppression is wrong, whether by white people or by black people. Now, oppression during apartheid, during colonialism, brought us all together because we were oppressed as Africans in our own land. Unfortunately, majority of our liberators turned into oppressors. There's one song that I sang and said, see our leaders become misleaders, and see our mentors become tormentors. And that's exactly what it became. When you look back, most of the oppressors, most of the dictators were once freedom fighters. I was named after Robert Mugabe. My name is Robert. And my parents gave me that name because in 1982, Robert Mugabe was a prized revolutionary. And we had so much hope in him because he was speaking so highly, he was giving so much hope. Yoweri Museveni himself, the ruler of Uganda, he used to speak the way to speak, only more eloquent when he was much younger. But unfortunately, as time went on, power corrupted them. And again, even more unfortunately, they found justification for that oppression, that anybody, especially the young people that rise to the occasion and say, we are the future and we want the opportunity to determine our own future, they are quick to brand the agents of the West. That is an unfortunate bit, and that is why it has become so hard for us to fight, to free ourselves, to be able to determine our own destiny, because there is always that narrative of the past. You talked about the youth movement or the youth search, and we appreciate that, and it inspires us from South Africa to Zimbabwe to Uganda and now to Senegal. I was in Senegal when Sonko was in prison, when the then president was trying to change the constitution so he could run again and again and again. But it took the steadfastness and strength of the people of Senegal to resist that. And that is how the new generation rose to the occasion. I'm just glad that the new leadership, the young leadership of Senegal, was raised by the people, was mandated by the people, so they must be in many ways answerable to the people. Thank you.
So sticking with that same point of this meeting, a young Senegalese student actually posed that same question to me. And she said, why is it that in Uganda, the youth in Uganda are not able to duplicate what the young people were able to accomplish in Senegal? You explain that? And I think that ties into the tail end of the question that I posed. To what extent can youth-led political movements in Africa transition from protest mobilization to institutional political power?
Thank you. I'll say the young people in Uganda or anywhere in Africa are not just weak. They're doing all they're doing. They're doing all they can. Unfortunately, they are up against immeasurable force. I'll give an example of the youth movement in Tanzania that tried just last year to fight for their democracy. Reports show us that up to 10,000 young people were massacred on the streets, and there has not been any accountability. In Uganda, the movement that I lead, we have thousands, up to 3,000 of our comrades in prison for daring to raise their fist up and say they want freedom. You've seen that in many other countries, in Cameroon, even in Kenya where there was a Gen Z protest and all that. So the young people of Africa are rising to the occasion. It hurts me to say that I still strongly believe in nonviolence, although nonviolence seems to delay. But these young people, we, those that are leading them, are struggling to discourage them from violence, because we see the kind of leaders that violence has brought to us. What was achieved in Senegal, I believe, can and will be achieved in Uganda, in Kenya, in Tanzania, and many other countries. But again, why do we, one would be quick to ask, why did you come to America? We come to America because while we fight for freedom back in Uganda, and while we use the truth and words as our weapon, we cannot fight against $1 billion. We cannot fight against American trained commandos that are staged as snipers to shoot down any young man or young woman that is seen on the street protesting with placards and banners and leading their friends. We cannot fight against the Euros that come from Europe. So, what we come to tell these administrations here, these Western capitals, is that we're not asking you to save us, just stop funding, stop sponsoring our oppression, stop arming them, stop obstructing our moral fight for the values that you talk with us, for the values that you profess every day. Democracy, the rule of law, and respect for human rights.
So maybe I'll pose 2 more questions and I'll open it up to Q&A. On the issue of Pan-Africanism, do you see meaningful prospects for stronger regional or continental solidarity among other movements in Africa, or are these struggles still largely confined within national political systems?
I really struggle to speak from the point of view of an opposition leader, or even from the politician. I hesitate to refer to myself as a politician. I did not get into politics because I wanted it. No. It was desperation. It was lack of an option. I'm not the most qualified.
Could you talk a little bit more about that for people that aren't familiar? Why did you say, I have no choice but to come and get politics?
Well, thank you. I'm a musician, guys. You will not find a politician called BOBI when that's a musical name. In fact, a few years ago, I had my long breakups that I painfully had to let go in order to fit in that image of the person running for president. But I don't even use to dress like this. I'm a musician. I was a musician. That is concerned. But before then, as you know, stars are so sought after. And in a country like Uganda, the powerful and mighty love to associate with stars. So I was friends with all these military generals and all these powerful people. And it was alright. I was not affected by the oppression because I was rich, I was popular, and everything. It's just this one day when I was walking out of a nightclub with my Cadillac Escalade with 24 spinning wheels, when I was attacked by a young man my age, but he was a security operative, and he slapped the hell out of me. What was my crime? Showing off. He asked me why I'm showing off. Don't you know this country has owners? Well, that was because all the girls were looking at me and I was the good of the night. That for me was a wake-up slap. It reminded me that regardless of my stardom and my musical success and my wealth, I was not safe in a country where there's no justice. And since then, I started changing my music from entertainment to edutainment. I sang about the rights of the people and the oppression. And it took me a whole 10 years from when I was 25 until when I was 35. I realized that much as I was communicating, still nothing could change until I went to the platform where these words matter. And therefore, 10 years later, in 2017, I ran for MP because I wanted to go to Parliament and speak these words. So when I went to Parliament, in that election, good enough, the people are connected with my top line, and I won with 80% of the vote, competing against the main political party and the opposition party. Still, I did not believe in partisan politics, and we started a political movement called the People Power Movement. But as time went on, I was pushed to challenge General Museveni first to stay alive because I had become so outspoken that if I was not anywhere where the eye of the media would focus on me and I would be safe, then I would be in pain. So much later, I ran for president, and here I am. But again, Why do I say that I don't want to be representing a particular grouping, even when I lead a political party, the main opposition political party in Uganda? I know that Uganda, like many other countries, is not divided between oppressors and the oppressed, not between ruling party and opposition, no, between oppressors and the oppressed. Why am I saying that? Because there are oppressors, even oppressed people, even within the ruling party. Jacob Museveni's son, who is the military commander, had his birthday yesterday, no, the day before yesterday, and he issued an order that every soldier has to show up and run to celebrate his birthday. He issued an order that every government official must come and celebrate his birthday, even when he himself was not there. And he tweeted, when you check out his Twitter, he questioned why the former military commanders had disrespected him by not showing up for his birthday run. Now, everybody, majority of them had to show up because they're so frightened. Imagine a military official in a government of Kim Jong-un. They are scared to death. So those are oppressed people within the ruling party. And yes, they are oppressed within the so-called opposition. Because we have so many members in the opposition whose major goal is not to put an end to the dictatorship, but to improve their status within the circumstances. So, what I see as desirable is galvanizing the people, regardless of their political party, to, see the truth and follow the truth. Now you ask, how did we then morph from a political movement called People Power to a political party called the National Unity Platform? Now we unveil this political party only 1 month to the election, because our movement could not be registered. There was an instruction by government not to register it as a political party, and yet I was going to run for president, and many people that we associate with were running for various positions of office. We came to an agreement that we cannot just be, sloganeering, and we cannot just be complaining. We chose to sit down and present an alternative. And so we ran for leadership. We got an unknown political party. There are so many political parties that were, registered so many years ago, and they remained on the papers. So we signed it through a proxy that was crafted, but we have to do it. Through a proxy, we changed this name, and we had a delegates conference where the leadership of that party elected me president, and boom, we showed it. The regime could not change anything. They had no alternative. The international community was lacking. So they let us run, and that is how we ended up being a political party. Why then do I think that it is necessary for other people in the same circumstances to do the same? Because there must be an alternative. We must criticize what's being done wrong, but also we must offer alternatives. Because when we remove the dictatorships, there shouldn't be virtues. There should be ready alternatives to spring us to the next level.
Okay, final question. You ran for Parliament in 2017, as you recounted, and you defeated the ruling party candidate, I believe, by 2/3 or more of the vote. And then you endorsed 2 or 3 other people who ran for Parliament against the ruling party candidate, and all of them won. And then I guess the decisive showdown was in August 2018, another parliamentary election in Arua, where Museveni himself went to campaign for the ruling party candidate, and you went to campaign for the opposition party candidate. accused you of inciting people to throw stones at his convoy, and the opposition candidate was arrested. You were arrested, beaten, and tortured, and the opposition candidate still won, even though Mussolini had campaigned for his candidate. So I guess that was the decisive point that made you trouble. Partly, you came to the United States for treatment, and many people didn't believe you would go back to Uganda. But not only did you go back, you ran for president in 2021, and you ran again in 2026, even without the threats. Some people might wonder, why? Why do you do that? Is the risk worth it? Explain.
Every risk for freedom is worth it. Because in this life, we either live or we exist. I want to live. And you cannot live when you're not free, when you don't have the right to turn your own destiny. So I went back home because I have to go back home anyway, whether I'm alive or dead. You know, I went back home then because I needed to keep that hope alive. I had run for my life, but still, it wasn't a solution to stay out. You might ask me if I'm going to go back this time. Yes, I'm only trying to make sure that I make it harder, or at least more costly. Yeah.
So now we go to the best part of this event, which is, of course, taking your questions from the audience. So let's see. Maybe we'll take 5 questions.
5, 6 questions. And if people could come up and line up if you have questions. Because we only have one mic.
Oh, I'm first now.
Please keep your questions concise.
Try.
So let's keep it brief so we can get everybody to
Maybe if we could make a conversation, ask a question, maybe I get to respond to it when it's still hot.
First, let me say thank you so much for bringing BOBI. I was so excited when I saw the video last night. I'm from South Africa, and I've been following your work and your struggles and your sacrifices. It's one question, but I'm going to list 11 issues that I think South Africa had that you don't have to waste your struggle in Uganda. South Africa, one, has the clergy, Desmond Tutu, had organized labor, that's number 2, had ANC exile, leaders in exile, with international work. It had the arms struggle, which was in exile as well. It had Nelson Mandela in prison. It had the mass democratic movement inside the country. It had international solidarity, friends against apartheid. Number 7, young white kids started to die in Angola at the Battle of Kutakule Valley, and the whites have started to complain. Number 8, international sanctions, economic, sports, and cultural boycott. Number 9, musicians in exile. We're highlighting the plight of the oppressed black people. Number 10, the civilized and civilians inside the country committed to making the country ungovernable. What do you have? That's why I said I'm struggling. What do you have? Because it looks like the odds are against you.
Thank you very much, my South African brother, Siyabonga. South Africa had all this. He had Mandela in prison, he had because of the cities where I'm doing, it had clergy, it had musicians and leaders in exile, name it. What do we have? We have everything. Then the next question would be, why are you not succeeding yet? I'll tell you, my brother, we have a saying in our Uganda culture that that a person who you used to commit crimes with, or a person who you used to steal with, when they sleep behind your house, you won't sleep. Now, these African dictators are yes, freedom fighters.